think having that stretch goal is really great. Have a pragmatic timeline. You know, if you could think in 1 to 3 years what you want to succeed. And I'm not saying don't achieve anything in the meantime. I'm saying your big goal. You want to earn 100 grand a year. Great. Don't aim for that in a month. You know, 1 to 3 years instead of 1 to 3 months. But also, and this is the biggest shift for me of keeping going, don't celebrate the outcomes at all. Like, you'll give yourself a pat on the back. People think I'm weird for this. When I hit my next million, 10 million, whatever, I won't celebrate it because that's just obvious. If I do the right things for long enough, of course I'm going to hit 10 million. I've not hit it yet, by the way. And it's like, and I'll hit 100 million. And maybe one day I'll be a billionaire if I can do it quick enough, but I don't give a fuck, right? So stop celebrating the outcomes and start celebrating the inputs of what you're doing.
Welcome to this episode of the Need to Succeed podcast. Now, really what this podcast is all about is speaking to really successful individuals and just really finding out what was their need to succeed. Because oftentimes we go through certain things in life and one person goes on to become wildly successful and while other people might not have the same level of success that they might desire. Now, what is the difference between these two people? What's their mindset? That's what we look to uncover on this podcast. And today I have got an absolutely incredible guest. I've got someone who last year, his property business was the property trading business of the year, and him himself, at just the age of 30, is the property investor of the year all across the UK. Has managed to become a multi-millionaire within the property space, and he's also now passing that knowledge on to many people and also changing their lives as well. An incredible guest, and I'm honored to welcome onto the Need to Podcast, Mr. Jamie York.
That was a wicked introduction. Good to be here, guys, and hopefully I'll add a load of value today. So
absolutely. Honestly, just before we sort of start, I just want to give a lot of honor and credit to yourself because I remember when you're like, what is he going to talk about now? You know, when I was going to start this podcast, I knew there was one person who I really wanted to get on, right? And that was yourself. And when you put that much pressure on yourself, you get a bit nervous and anxious. I'm like, I need this person, but this person does not need me. Right? So how's this conversation going to go when I ask them to appear on the podcast? I know how busy you are, you're scaling your company, all these sort of things, right? And I just remember having all these anxieties. I'm like, okay, cool, let me just approach him, let me ask him. And I asked you, and straight away you're like, yeah, of course, man, I'll do it. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'd prepared how I was going to try and convince you and I was going to try and sell the idea to you.
I should have made you work for it.
But, you know, it was such an honor and such a humbling experience, you know, for you to sort of have that and say, you know what, yeah, I believe in you and yeah, I'm more than happy because that's pretty much what you said. I'm more than happy to come and do it. And I just wanted to let everyone know. I know, you know, there's probably a lot of people out here who've, you know, they've seen your content on YouTube and, you know, people that are saying Jim is a really nice guy. But I just want them to know, like, that's really who he is, like a real person as well, yeah?
There you go, I'll take it.
So just want to acknowledge you for that.
I appreciate that.
Now, we've got a tradition on the podcast. Now, it's the very, very first question. You're wildly successful now. I know you've got more ambitions to be successful as well. But what does success actually mean to you?
I'm a big believer in balance. So success originally, you know, people think of success of what they don't have. So if you've got an absence of money, successful could mean having a lot of money. If you're morbidly obese, then successful is having a great body. If you've got terrible relationships in your life, then finding somebody that you can be with for the rest of your life is success. So for me, I kind of think of a balance, and I call it the wheel of life. So if you visualize a wheel, each wheel's got the spokes, right? And each spoke is an area of life. So it could be financial, social, relational, material, situational, spiritual, educational, and so on, 10 areas. And each area of your life needs to have a solid spoke behind it. So if you've got 9 great areas, but then your fitness is awful, right? Your spoke is really low. If you can visualize the wheel when you're cycling or something like that, what happens is all of the pressure goes on that, right? And so being grossly unfit has an impact on the rest of your life that puts pressure on the spokes. Eventually it starts breaking down. Likewise though, if you're insanely good at one thing, you know, like you can see some wildly successful, financially successful individuals, but you look at them and are like, they don't seem to be particularly nice people. They're grossly unhealthy. They have terrible relationships in their life. And so visualize that as a wheel in your wheel of life, right? So you've got all these small spokes and then one huge one. But the rest of their life will end up deteriorating that, and it puts so much pressure on that one area. The other thing psychologically that's wrong with those people is that they have to define their success as that one thing. And this is where people get trapped in the race, right? If you start making money, and that's how you're recognized all the time. And I went through a period of this. It's all of my recognition was on how much money I made. It's like, that's not what makes me successful. What about the fact I'm a good person? What about the charity work that I do? All of that. But when you become successful in one area of your life, your identity becomes that one thing. So I know that's a really long-winded answer, but in short, I think success is having all of the spokes in the wheel of life being balanced and then growing it all over time. Only then can you be successful, when all of your spokes are solid.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I don't mind the answer being long, right? Because it's true. Because, you know, if we look at the world, everything is in the short clips, TikTok, 7 seconds, Instagram, all of that, right? But, you know, like you've just said, it is complex, right? Like, and what success means to one person can also be very, very different to other people. Like you said, if you spoke to someone who hasn't got money now and they said, you know, what's success? I want to be rich. I need that money. You know, at a certain level where you are now, you're thinking, actually, it's about balance, right? And I understand that, you know, because my property business is called Statera. So Statera means balance. So Statera Estates, right? So I completely understand it's about balance of, you know, if we're doing business, you winning, me winning. It's about, you know, balance between, you know, work life, family life, you know. So I completely agree with you in terms of balance, right?
Yeah.
So great answer. Okay, cool. So what I really want to know, what I really want to understand, because like your journey is, you know, from me just watching from the outside, it's, you know, really, really incredible. And it's also one that a lot of people would say, that's, you know, I think I mentioned something to you, like, I was like, you're living my life, right? Because when I was younger, I said, I want to be a millionaire before I'm 30, right?
Yeah.
You know, and all these things, you know, you started, you know, whenever you started, you've now, you know, before the age of 30, you've made it to become a millionaire, you know, but, you know, what I understand from speaking to successful people and going on that journey myself is it's not easy, all right? So what I really want to understand is let's just go back and kind of just figure out your journey to actually get into where you are today. So if I was to say, like, who was Jamie, you know, in school?
Do you really want to go there? I don't know, like, do you know what? In school as a person, I was a bit of a joker, having a bit of a laugh with people. I wouldn't say like class clown or anything like that, but it's like I'd always just be chilled with it. I wasn't a naughty kid, but I wasn't a good student either. You know, I'd never bunk, but I never did homework ever. Like I was the famous one was, you know, coursework had to be handed in on time for your GCSEs, and Romeo and Juliet was one of the essays, and I handed it in a year and 2 weeks late to the final thing, and somehow, yeah, they still took it.
Is that legal?
I don't know. Legal. No, but it's like, so I was pretty chilled at that, but like I was also hard working in the things that I wanted to work hard at. So I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the boundaries of school. Like, but reading for school, I hated it. And yet now anyone knows me, I read hundreds of books. Like I'm obsessed with knowledge. But at school, I think it was because, I don't know, 1984, George Orwell, right? I love that book. Really love it. I've read it like 5-10 times now, and I'm like, wow. But I had to read it for English. I never read it. I went on, there was a website where like you get like a 1 page of the entire book, like a snippet, and I did my essay based off that 1 page, right? So it's like, because of those boundaries, I didn't like it, because and maybe it's an ego thing, I don't know. But the things that I did like money at that age, you know, I would work really hard for. So I was a bit of a hustler. So PlayStation 3, I remember PlayStation 3 came out.
What age is this that we're talking?
PlayStation 3. I would have been 14.
14, yeah, okay,
14.
cool.
PlayStation 3. My first hustle was Pokemon cards, and that was when I was like 8, 9, where like you got doubles or the shinies, shiny cards, and people wanted it, and I'd be like, well, I've got 3 of them, I'll take them for it, and then I ended up selling them for like £2, £1 and stuff, and I made like
Big money.
8 years old, I made like £100 in a month, and I was like,
That is big money, actually.
well, yeah. Honestly, I felt so rich, and like I always wanted that, and because then what happened is I went into a grammar school, and down south grammar school is a bit different to up north. So down south, going to a grammar school, you have to do 11 plus, and if you are in a top 15%, I think, intelligence, you can go to certain grammar schools. Up north, there's a lot of grammar schools where it's just paid for, it's private, right?
Okay.
So just for listeners up here, up north versus down south. So I went to this school, and whilst, yes, it is intelligence, I actually found that most of all, it's how trained you are to do the test. So a lot of people that went to grammar schools, they went to private schools before. And so a lot of people had money, And I did not. Like, my background's very blue collar. Half my family's on the dole. The other half are sort of working with the hands, stuff like that, which is cool. But I saw this wealth divide, and it was kind of like the haves and have-nots. And I didn't want to be a have-not. So anything that people had, like PlayStation 3, I remember my mates were like, yeah, we've got that on pre-order. And I was talking to my mum about it, and she was like, no chance. We got 50 quid for the birthday, which was like big money. And I said to my mum, and I was like, this is fast forwarding to the PlayStation now. I said, can you buy me this game? I can't remember what the game was, but the PlayStation 3 games were like 50 quid back then. And she went, Jamie, you haven't got a PlayStation 3. I was like, don't worry about that. I was like, buy me the PlayStation game for my birthday. That's what I'd love for it. And she was like, okay, fine. And that was like 4 weeks before. And I was like, right, how much is a PlayStation 3? It was like £350. So I was like, how am I going to make it? So then donuts were the answer. So the BP garage, the petrol garage down the road, I'd go there in the morning. My mum would drop me there, and it's a 5-minute walk to school. A pound would buy you 5 donuts. And I sold them at the first break at school because people were peckish, you know, and I sold the donuts for 50 pence each, or 3 for £1. And I just did that, and then 4 weeks I bought the PlayStation, happy days. And so, like, I was always this hustle mentality that, like, I realised that money is available constantly. Like, you can make endless amounts of money. There just has to be a transfer of value. And that's all money is. Like, money is worthless. If I had £1 million in my bank right now, £10 million in my bank right now, or £10, it makes no fucking difference to the conversation we're having right now. And it's no different. You're still here talking to me. Hell, I could have just lost £1 million in that moment there. I don't know, right? So money only really has an intrinsic value once it's exchanged. And I think I realised that. I wouldn't have worded it like that when I was that age, but I realised all I really need to do to make money is have that exchange of value. The only difference that's progressed since then is what I felt I needed. And then what I felt I needed grew over time, because I recognised that in my behaviour. Once I got the PlayStation, I stopped the hustle. Even though I was making money, I stopped the hustle because I didn't need it anymore. You know, when you came from such a place of scarcity, but I don't mean mindset-wide scarcity. When you come from not having anything, you don't expect anything. Yeah. So I'd go around my friend's house and they'd have hundreds of PlayStation games, but they'd only play 2 or 3. Yeah. So I bought 2 or 3, and I played them constantly. And then I only ever really like Call of Duty, Gran Turismo, and FIFA, right? And then those sort of days. And then when the new one comes out, I sold that one for what I could and saved up for that one, and so that was it. But then what I realised is your needs can grow. So you know what you need is selfish around you. But then once you're satisfied, it then becomes more and more selfless, right? So if you think about your goals, so my goal is to satisfy me, then it's my team around me, my family around me, then it's maybe society around me. Maybe it's, we're in Leeds right now, maybe it's people in Leeds. What can I do to impact people in Leeds? Maybe then it's West Yorkshire, maybe then it's Yorkshire, maybe then it's the North, maybe then it's the country, maybe then it's the world. And, you know, eventually you get to Elon Musk, who's got like an intergalactic vision. But the more I realised what I need grew, because I wanted to help other people, therefore my vision grew. And so I helped more people. And so ironically, it becomes self-fulfilling, because the more people you help, the more money you make, and then the more you can give it away. Yeah. And therefore it grows a bit.
100%. I always say like there's a direct correlation between the value you give and how many people you give value to actually how much money you make. Like, it's literally direct correlation, right?
Of course,
the more you help, the more that comes back to yourself. But just sort of taking you back, because, you know, you started off Pokemon games. I mean, I wasn't actually allowed to play with Pokemon because, you know, my mum's Christian and she thought it was devilish, so we couldn't
You
play.
missed out.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, there was also a lot of kids at school who were also into Pokemon. But they were not exchanging it. They were not looking at it as I'm going to make money from this, right? Like, where did that sort of need to make capital, to make money, like, where's that come from?
I think. Have you heard the nature versus nurture argument?
Yes.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, there's why do people get to where they get to? Well, you've got nature versus nurture. So the nature is who the person is. They are just inherently this individual. Like, you have people that are natural salespeople, and then you have people that are nurtured into great salespeople. You have entrepreneurs that are just naturally entrepreneurial, just the way their brains are wired. And I definitely have a little bit of that in me. Like, I've always been like, oh yeah, I love this. I like connecting with people. I like talking. I love people, and so it comes a little bit more naturally to me. Then you've got the nurture, and nurture is your environment, right? So you have to bear in mind, so my mindset was a bit hustle, work your ass off. Then what happened is I joined the grammar school, where there was suddenly this gap that I never realised before. Because, you know, if you don't see anything on that, why would you miss something you don't realise is there? It's like people that are blind. Imagine what it's like to live blind. It's like, well, if you were born blind, you don't have a fucking clue what it was like to see. So I doubt you care that much. Who knows? Maybe I'm speaking out of turn. I don't know. But I think because I had who I am, and then what I had is the nature of seeing what other people had. And it wasn't really that. I was never jealousy driven. But what I recognised is what was less. Arguments in the family, right? And people say money doesn't make you happy. First of all, if you don't think money makes you happy, you haven't given enough of it away, right? I truly believe money can buy you happiness. It's just when you give it to other people in some way, shape or form, right? But what I realised is there were a lot of family arguments in my family, and it was always, the root was money, or the lack of money. And so it's not that having money would solve all of my family's problems. It'd take a lot of them away. You know, money problems really do facilitate them. Then the next driver that I had, and this is the next nature, is my dad dying. So I was 13 when my dad died, turning 14. So he died in September. My birthday's in November. And obviously really hard and all of that sort of thing. But it also, he was 38 years old. So I don't know why I started this. I was like, what if I die at 38? And every year since he died, I keep saying, what if, and even now, you know, I'm 30 years old, what if I die at 38? And so weirdly, death does not scare me at all. Like, if I got told 38's the day, I'd be like, oh, a bit fucking shit, I'd rather 98, you know? but it is what it is. But my fear became, imagine not living my potential through that. You know, death is a certainty. Why would you be scared of something you know? It's the unknown you should fear. And so everyone's scared of dying, but nobody seems to be scared of not living. And so I'd say, like, my nature is a little bit of who I am, but then constantly, and this is everyone, by the way, because it's how you choose to take your environment. And that's really important. I chose to see those people and go, with money, and go, why can't I have that? And they're human beings.
What made you think that, though? Because, you know, all your family on the dole, you know, that's all you've known. And, you know, now you've obviously a dad, which I'm imagining was a big sort of figure in your life. He's not passed away, which is not taking even more away from you, I'd imagine. What makes you think you can go out there and do all these things that you're thinking about?
I always had this mindset, and I always had great support around me. So my mum especially, like, teachers not so much, they didn't really think I'd amount to too much, but my mum genuinely, if I said to my mum, I'm going to go on the moon one day, she'd go, amazing, how are you going to do that? And it wouldn't be a joke, it wouldn't be just like, no, you know, she'd be like, no, I genuinely believe you, because she believed in me so much that if I said something, she knew that it would become reality. And I don't know if that's who she was, I don't know if it's because of who I am, or maybe a merger of the two. So I think that belief allowed me to do that. But a teacher said to me, if you ever want to take a risk in life, just think about how bad it can get and then realise how bad it's not. And that was a really good line that stayed with me. So if you think about now, okay, right, now made some millions, got my office, which I love, got my home, which I love.
Mate.
Thank you, mate. And, but what if I lose it all? Like say I make a bad move. I don't know how bad it could get. I'll protect myself pretty well. But I don't know. Let's say I get sued and lose a chunk of money. Let's say the properties just comes crumbling down. Everything that you could think goes wrong. So what then? Let's say I lose my house. Well, I have to go live with my mum. Maybe I need to go on the dole. It's like, oh no, poor fucking me. The state will pay me to live. Like, and I love my mum. And I could spend some time with my mum whilst I get back on my feet. Is that really that bad? No. And so I think it wasn't.
I don't know, man. You won't miss the Aston.
Nah. I do like the Aston. But like, the thing is, it wasn't so much a mindset. And you asked, what made me think I could do it? It was like, well, so what if I don't? It's like, imagine me being on my deathbed going, or what if I did try? What if I did give it a go? Who gives a fuck if I fail? I fail all the time. Like my mentees and stuff like that, they're like, how'd you keep winning? How'd you keep going? It's like you're seeing the one win for 99 failures that happen. I fail more every single day than every single member of my team. I fuck up more than almost every single person I've ever met in my life.
Why is that?
Why do I fuck up?
Yeah.
Because if you think of this circle as your comfort zone, and I don't just mean what you're comfortable with, I mean what you know, right? And what you know you can control. What you're comfortable with is because you've got an element of control. And then, but if you want growth, if you want the comfort zone to grow, you operate just outside of it, right? Like right now, I'm not going to launch a property company in every country in the world. That would be ridiculous. That's over there somewhere in a different room, right? But what if I decided, like right now we're at 35 properties a month. Let's say I get to 50 properties a month and then I've got lettings, brokerage and law in-house and I've nailed that. It's not a wild thing for me to say, okay, I'm in West Yorkshire. Next year I'm going to open Manchester branch, Newcastle and Nottingham. They're probably my 3 areas I target. And by the end of the year I want 50 in each of those per month because I've done it all now. That's not crazy. But that is outside my comfort zone. And so the reason I fuck up so much is I operate here constantly, which has pros and cons, right? You do feel a bit more stress, a bit more anxious, but it's just who I am now. It's embedded in me to constantly strive for the next step. And, there's a concept called entropy. And entropy is, if kind of think of a fruit, you're either ripening or you're dying. Okay, and we are like that in as humans as well. That if you want to stay the same as you are, you probably need to go 1% better every day to stay the same because we are degrading. Like you're getting fatter, we're getting dumber, we're like everything. My hair's getting thinner, I'm getting fatter, I'm getting uglier. Like it's all downhill for me.
It's so harsh, mate.
No, but you know what I mean. So but genuinely, like 30 to 20, like 20, I could eat so much shit and I'd still be ripped.
Big difference.
Yeah. Now, honestly, it's like, don't get me wrong, I'm not like, all aching everything, but I do have to watch what I'm eating.
Yeah.
I do need to go to the gym just to maintain where I'm at. So entropy is all about upgrading yourself to sustain or develop. And ultimately, the reason why I fuck up so much is because I operate here. But the difference is my comfort zone is so huge now. Like you can send me in so many situations and honestly, complete unknowns now. Like you could send me to a completely different country, not knowing anything about the language, the laws, anything like that, and tell me what type of business you think I should launch there. And I don't know whether I'll succeed, but I know I wouldn't panic at all. And I'd have no doubt about working out the plan. But it's not because I know how to do it, it's because I know myself now. And who I am myself as a developed skill set is far beyond what I was last year and 5 years ago and stuff like that. So ultimately that's the problem, isn't it? Is failures, even in the definition of the word, is you have failed. You have gone wrong, naughty, bad. And it's always like from a young age when you do something wrong, it's but it's like, why? Why? Like for me, failure is success as long as you get back up.
Yeah.
And that's the key. But most people don't. They give up too soon.
Yeah, 100%. And that's such a key thing because it's weird. Another correlation. The people who fail the most are the most successful people on this planet.
Yeah.
It's not something that's spoken about. It's not, like I said, you don't see all of those failures. We don't see Thomas Edison's, 9,999 failures. We know about the one time he absolutely smashed it and he's created this thing. But it's like, fell off and fell forward, right? But how do you how do you build the confidence? How did you kind of build the confidence? Obviously, you always had the support from your mum.
Yeah.
But what happened the first time you actually felt? You go into it, I'm going to achieve something. Do you remember, what it was?
That I failed.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's say in a, because we could fail every single day, right? In a business sense, something that you started business-wise, entrepreneurial, whether it was even work, whatever it might be, that kind of hit you.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the first one was, but if you go to the first one in property, because that's quite related, the property that I bought was stupid. I was watching loads of Homes Under the Hammer. Love Homes Under the Hammer. But you'd watch all these people, and it was Martin and Lucy, the presenters at the time, and they ignored everyone ignored their advice. Don't do this, and then they still made money, and it was it was crazy. They'd make loads of money. I'd be like, if these idiots can do this, why can't I? And at the same time, my lecturer, he invested in properties in Burnley, and I was like, oh, brilliant. So I worked my arse off.
So you were at uni at this point?
I was at uni. Yeah. I was 19 at this point. And I started trading a bit, and I was all right. I could recognise patterns pretty well. Started making a bit of money, and I got a large chunk of money because I hated it, so I sold it off. About $250,000 I got, and people
at 19.
I'm not just before 19, yeah. And what happens when you give a teenager that amount of money that's never had it? So
problems.
Yeah, so I spent about 230 grand of that in 1 year, in 10 months. Wow. Yeah, so I had about 19,000 left. And then I thought, Burnley, I'll buy property there, right? I couldn't get a mortgage for loads of reasons, but at that time it was really hard anyway. And then I bought 36 Burdett Street in Burnley. It was £21,800. So my mate's dad lent me.
For the property?
For the property.
Cash,
yeah. £21,800. 3-bed, mid-terrace property.
Wow.
And it cost about £8,000 to refurb it back then, full refurb, rewire, everything. And my mate's dad bought me a van. And I was like, oh, wicked, van, toolbox, and that was it. He was like, go on then, go do your thing. And I was like, all right, cool, I could do this. But I had no money left. So I didn't have any money. I actually had to borrow another 500 quid for the conveyancing, for the solicitors, right? So bought the property and got me the van. And so I worked cash in hand, and then I'd drive up Friday night, sleep in the back of the van, work the weekend on the house, drive back down. It's 240 miles up, 240 down.
Hustle.
And it was terrible, screwed it all up. And it took about 10 months. And I won't go through the full story because I've gone over it 100 times, but basically somebody broke in the house, ripped everything out, took the radiators, my toolbox, the wires out of the wall. They dug up the floor in the kitchen, all of that sort of thing. And it was every lesson that you could learn in one property. But at the end of it, I was just like, okay, that's shit.
How did you feel when you talking about failure, right? How did you feel when you kind of walked into the house? Or was it a moment like that when you walked in and you saw everything's gone? Or how did that actually happen?
Oh yeah, I cried. I cried when it happened. It was more like, it wasn't tears of like, oh no, I feel so sad. It was just the shock. Because I thought I was going to go in and it's like, oh wow, they've done the plastering, because I didn't know how to plaster, so that's the bit that I've got to do. And it was more opening it, and it was 10 months, really go back for it. I'm knackered from it, absolutely knackered, whilst trying to study at uni as well. And then when I saw it, and I was like, and then it was like, well, yeah, it was and it was this thing, but honestly, after, I just felt numb. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. And it was probably good timing at the time. I started looking into Stoicism, as in philosophy, right?
Yeah.
And it was talking about a lot about controllables and uncontrollables. And if you want to be successful in life, you have to control what you can control and then let go of the uncontrollables. And I thought it's a really good timing for that.
I was going to say that's very good timing.
Very good. We're talking like a week before I was reading about controllables. So I did. I got a pen and paper and I wrote down what I could control. And it was like 2 things. And it's only ever 2 things. It's how you approach the information that you're given. So how you choose to see the information. And number 2 is how you choose to respond to it. And that's it. Everything's that. It's like your emotions and how you choose to feel about something, taking the information and how you respond to it. And then when I realised that, it's kind of like, okay. That's not to say I'm not human. You know, like you'll get somebody slag you off online or something like that. It's not to say I don't read something or whatever it is and go, oh man, like, and you feel shit and it's like, oh, I worked so hard. Why does that happen? It's just like, but then it's like, okay, can I control that? So we're very much like that situation. I screwed up massively, but it was like, well, it's happened. I could sulk about it, I could cry about it, I could blame, I can call people, I can shout. Is it going to make the house suddenly better? No. Do I have any access to capital? And I hadn't got on the concept of raising proper money elsewhere. So I was like, no, okay, so what can I do? So that wasn't a controllable in my mind at that, now in hindsight it is. But, so I sold it. So I just put it online, I sold it. I ended up losing net $2,000 on it. So
It's not bad.
more importantly, I lost 10 months. But, you know, it screwed with my mindset more than anything. Like, so I made it like I was worthless. I was young. You know, I looked like a 12-year-old then, sounded like a 12-year-old, couldn't grow any face bum fluff. And people are going to take advantage of me, especially as a southerner with a southeast accent going up north. They're going to hear that, rack up the prices, you know, all that sort of stuff. And so sometimes I still look back and I go, if that didn't happen, how much further would I be on? But actually, I think it's because of that that I'm in this situation now. And then, you know, there's this line that I really stick with me is that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. And I realised that that situation happened for me. It helped me develop myself so much more. And often we have that. If you think about every major growth point of your life, it will come from something you thought was awful at the time. When something's taken away from you, when you fucked up something, where it could be a relationship, could be business, whatever it is, where you go, that allowed a gap. And what you have to realise is you've always got a beaker full, right? Always. Your beaker is always full. You wake up to when you go to sleep, there's always something happening, even if it is rest time and thinking, reflection or reading. Your beaker is always full. It's not about filling it with more. And so then when you realise that, when something takes away from your life, the positive that is always there from something getting taken away is now there's space in your beaker. And then it's your choice with what it gets full with. Understanding it is going to get full again, just with what. And so that's what it did for me. It took away this sort of thing in my life where it was like the weaknesses, the negative emotions around it, the amount that I learnt there and the pain points. And it's like, okay, how do I grow from that? And then my beaker got full of positives from that.
How did you grow from that? Because that's, you know, from the way you've described this, it's a really impactful moment, and I can understand why, right? How do you come out of that? How did you come out of that?
So originally I just sulked for a bit, if I'm honest. You know, like I said, I'm human. But what I started doing is, okay, if I go back into property, because I love property, I really like the idea of it. I was really sold on it. And I thought, I can do that. I'm not an idiot. I can really work hard. And I was like, so if I go back in, how can I control situations? It was like, well, first of all, why did my house get broken into? Well, it's not really my fault, but it was a shithole area. I bought it because it's all I could possibly afford. Whereas it wasn't hey, here's an area round the corner. It's going to cost 10 grand more, 20 grand more back in the day. It's a great area, save longer, or raise finance. You know, it wasn't really in my vocab at that time. So then it was, okay, what about the people that screwed me around because they got screwed around on work? And it's like, well, I did no vetting. I essentially picked the person because he lived next door. I didn't see any of the work. We flipped a coin on how much to pay him.
Wow.
So it was something like 1,500 or 2 grand.
Wow.
And I was like, nah, 1,500. He was like 2 grand. We ended up agreeing to flip a coin on whether it's going to be 1,500.
That's 33%.
Yeah. And then I paid it all in cash up front with no receipt. So, you know, when you look at what I could control, quite a lot in hindsight. But, you know, I was a kid. It was the first time I was excited. And then I realised, I was like, the problem is, those are the bits that I know. You know, and then you talk about your conscious... what's the word? I can't remember it. It will come to me in a sec. But you know, there's things that you know. Conscious incompetence and subconscious incompetence. So there's things you know. So I know how to speak English, right? Then there's the stuff I don't know. I know I can't speak Chinese. And then there's 95% of your life, which is in the realm of you don't know, right?
You're not even aware of.
Yeah. Like, for example, before you heard of Bitcoin, you didn't know, you don't know about NFTs and cryptocurrency because you never heard of it, right? So it's the stuff that you don't know. And that was in my head. I was like, the problem is within property is I know what I know what I don't know, but 95% of it, I don't know that I don't know it. So then I was like, well, how do you? And it's like, well, you get educated. So I was like, we've done that all our life. Like, I didn't know about arithmetic, history, geography, anything. And what happens? You go to school for it. Then you go to university. Why have I gone to university? Because I don't know the right questions to ask in order to get my knowledge base. So then I thought, well, why not do the same? And so I did. I ended up looking out there, got educated, and then that gave me a lot more. Now I know this. But as important, I now knew what I didn't know, and what I know I didn't know was now much bigger. And so now when I was going in, I could go in with cautious optimism, knowing that I don't know. I could research each stage. So now I knew the right questions to ask, whereas before I didn't even know there were questions to ask.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But there was something that you said I just really want to touch on before carrying on with that, which is, you said the reason I went to university because I didn't know what questions to ask. So that brings me around to what's your viewpoint on, the whole educational system and university and the importance of it?
I think it depends on your country that you're in. So I'll talk about the UK. We're so lucky in the UK. Like, it's as close to free as you can get with education. Like, we moaned when it used to be $3,000 a year. I was in the last year of that, right? And then it went to $9,000 a year, and we're like, oh my God, it's like, try going to America and paying $250,000 to get your education. Like, it's so heavily subsidized. And then we pay it back through some tiny loan when you start earning a certain amount. It's fuck all, right? I think if you don't know what you want to do, I think university is a nice fallback. And I think as fallbacks go, I think it's not a bad one. People go, oh, it's 3 years to get BSc or MSc after, It's not just that, it is the transferable skills. And yes, a lot of that transferable skills is going out and getting pissed with your mates for 3 years. But that is developing yourself. It is. You learn how to socialize a lot more in that.
Yeah.
From a pragmatic point of view, I think if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a lawyer or anything like that, absolutely do it.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. I tell you now, I'm not having a heart surgeon that's just gone and read a book somewhere and gone, School of Hard Knocks. It's like, that ain't happening. Whereas honestly, Elon Musk said this. He was like, somebody asked him in an interview, like, do you specifically hire people that have got their degree? And he said, put it this way, I wouldn't hold it against them. And I thought that was really good wording. It was like, it's almost like, look, it's completely irrelevant, but I won't hold it against you. And I kind of have that mindset. Like, when somebody applies for a role here, do I take them slightly more seriously? Yes, but not if somebody's got a comparable against it. And what I mean by that is, if this person has gone and got a 2-1, and they've had a couple of part-time jobs, that shows that they have been committed enough for 3 years, which is a decent chunk of time. Bear in mind how young you are when you go. It's a big portion of your life.
I didn't make it through, so I get it, yeah.
Yeah, why? Like, it's no wonder people give up. 3 years to get BSc after your name, right? But it does show that commitment to something. So it's like, if they are fresh out of uni, say there's a 22, 23-year-old that I'm hiring, one of the biggest risks is that they come for 6 months, you train them, and then they're bored and then they move on. But if somebody's been at uni for 3 years...
Stickability.
Exactly, stickability. But it means nothing to me compared to, say, somebody that's done 3 years working for somebody. Because you've got the same benefit. They've probably developed themselves in the real world for a lot longer. They've also got a comparable of what a shit employer is. And then they can compare us against them. And it's much like anything. When you're not compared to anything, there's higher expectations of everything. So do I think it's important? No, not unless you want to specialise. And for being an entrepreneur, no.
It was the main benefit, yeah. For me, it was a case of, I was doing a generic course, to be fair, business, right? So it's like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
You know, and this is at the height of recession. So I'm talking, I went to uni in 2008, doing business. And it's like, well, I could literally complete all of this, or I could actually go into the world and try to learn business, right? So that was the way that I sort of justified it to myself at the time. But
a business degree does not prepare you for business in any way, shape, or form. Like a business degree, you're going to learn about pestle analysis, SWOT analysis, maybe how to read some charts, organizational behavior, which is great if you owned my business today.
Yes.
Right? The stuff like SWOT, pestle, organizational behavior is really helping now. It's really helpful. It's like, great. But you know what I can do is I can go on Amazon and I can order the same fucking book. Like, genuinely, like, before anyone's thinking about going to do a degree, is you can go on and look at the reading list of any university. And your entire education, the only difference between doing this and the actual education is the exam that they take, right? You can go on and you can order the exact same reading list. And if you read it, and test yourself against it, you have 90% of the education that you'll have. You just won't have BSc. So, yeah.
That's brilliant. You know, when you actually go out there into the real world, like you said, if you're someone who's you've read that, you've applied in the real world for 3 years, you know, and then they come and say in front of you, you're thinking, well, you know what, you've got the knowledge and you've actually implemented it. I would probably say that person then tips above someone who's just come out of uni. They've got this degree, but they haven't actually gone into the real world. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. The thing is, they can get the net benefit. And the best type of person is you find somebody that's been working somewhere for 3 years. You can see they've paid for education outside of the norm, like wealth education, development of personal development. It's like, that's my kind of person. This is somebody that not only do they think like me, they've paid for it. Not got a student loan. They've paid for it to make it happen. And then if they've done a bit of networking as well, that's the key. Like the 10%, I think, apart from the exam, is honestly, go and look at other universities where they've got guest lecturers, because those guest lecturers are better than the normal lecturers. The lecturers go to watch them as well. And then you can go for free in almost any university in the UK. You can just turn up, register, you pay nothing, and yet you're getting some of the best education.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
you can go to London Business School, LSE, you can go to Harvard if you want to zoom in or anything like that. Loads of them.
Wow, brilliant, brilliant. Okay, cool. So coming back to your, because I just wanted to touch on that because you mentioned about, you know, you're really going to uni because you don't know what you don't know. But once you kind of know it, then, you know, it's a little bit, do you really need to go through that? But obviously, as we've mentioned, just for everyone's sake, if you're a doctor, you know, a lawyer, there's an engineer, then obviously there's certain things that you actually need to go to uni for, right? Because of what I'm saying. But just kind of going back to you've you know, spend, which I'm still baffled by, you spend like 30 grand on actually buying and refurbing a property, which is crazy to some of us now. But
yeah.
You've done that. You know, whatever's happened has happened. You've learned those lessons from it. What was the next step?
For me, it really was a series of mistakes. And, you know, people go, what's the key to success? I think luck does come into it. And I don't mean, oh, you're lucky. I mean, like, the more actions you take, like, it's just science. The more actions you take, the more reactions that you'll get, right? So let's say you do 10 things, and this is where it comes back to me fucking up all the time, right? If you do 10 things a day and you fuck up 9, but you get 1 win, and you're able to focus on that win, and that's the mindset part, right? You've got your win for the day. That's pretty cool, right? Let's say I do 1,000 things a day, and you might go, well, how do you do 1,000 things? Well, I don't, and I'll get to that in a second. But say I, as an individual, do 50 things, but then I hire the team, and I train them to fuck up a lot and make a load of mistakes and take a load of actions, and they do 50 things. Now, you've got 1 win, but they've got 5. And then I've got 25 people. So now I get 125 wins a day. And then people look at the growth now that's exponential, and it's like, how the hell are you growing? It's like, because I fuck up and my team fuck up and everyone takes those actions. So it kind of ended up falling into that, where I just realized that the standard, the bar that people set, it's like, why wouldn't you take the risk? I think about, like, I'm listening to Jordan Peterson at the moment, and he was like, what's more baffling is why people don't do things. And he goes like, drugs, for example. People are like, why would somebody take drugs? And he's just like, well, it's pretty obvious why people take drugs. The real question is, why do they stop? You know, and it's stuff like that. And it's like, you know, why does this happen? It's like you're asking the wrong questions. Like, it baffles me when people are like, is it really worth the risk? And it's like, what a stupid question. Like, that's your problem, is you're asking the wrong questions. Think about it. Like, you could go and get a job tomorrow, right, for what? 20 grand. Depending on where you are. Up here, 20 grand. In London, 30, 35, right? And you're earning. If you're going to work your ass off, sales or like a higher tier C-suite, management, whatever, you might be 45, 50 grand, right? And you build it up. But you could go tomorrow and go and get interviews for that. Every single person watching, especially listen to this sort of podcast, like not your average person. So you're worried about risking starting your own business or whatever it is for people. And when you think about the real risk, let's go back to me losing it all. Right? And I said this, and this was my uni thing, because I said to my mates after uni, I was like, I'm going all in. And I had, just so you know, after I went to uni, I had job offers from like investment banks where I was starting on like 60 grand, which is 60 grand 8 years ago. Right? Now it's probably like 85 grand today. Big money. And I turned it down, and I could have communicated this a lot better, but you know, it was my ego at the time. And they went, do you not think that's stupid?
What did you say to them? I want to know.
Well, I said to them, look, put it this way. And I was like, that's offered. And you think I'm mad walking away. And I said, look, I'm going to go out this. I'm going to smash it. I'm going to work my arse off. I'm going to hustle. I might have to be on the dole at points. I might have to do a job that, you know, like where, nothing wrong with this, but say it was at Tesco. Do you know the great thing about working at Tesco is say you work 9 to 5, you work 9 to 5. Yeah, you get offered overtime and all that, but you leave at 5, you are not going, oh man, did I press that button on the till like enough times today? Whereas other stressful jobs, right? So it's like, if I have to do that to get me by, to eat, to have a pillow to lay on, a blanket over me, and it doesn't work out, imagine what that does for an interview where I can talk about my 2 years of hustling and grinding, how it didn't work out for me. And now I realise I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm an intrapreneur. I'm an entrepreneur, but I need to work for somebody else and do this. That's a great thing. So I said to my mates, I was like, my worst case scenario is I have to live your life. And yes, in hindsight, actually, yeah, really good friends. But like, it was probably a bit more subtle than that. Yeah, it was a dickhead way of communicating it, but I still stand by it. It's like, my only risk was looking like an idiot. And so really, the only reason people don't put their all into something and why people dip their toes in the pool all the time is their ego. They're worried about how it's going to be perceived as other people, from other people, which makes sense. You know, like, we don't really celebrate people taking risks in this country. You know, if you don't follow the line that we're indoctrinated against, which is all goes back to Dale Carnegie with school and prisoners and stuff like that, by the way, but maybe we could talk about that maybe another time, I don't know. But it's like, we're all indoctrinated into that. And so then when people step out of it, it's you're the weirdo. It's like, yeah, I'm okay with that. Because if you think about what you want to achieve in life, the 1% have it. So why the fuck should the opinion of 99% bother you? In order to succeed and have what that 1% have, you have to be willing to do the things that 99% of people aren't ever going to do in order to have the life that 99% of people will never have. So why take the opinions of it? And a big bit of advice I always give to people is getting good advice is great, but who's giving it to you? Like, if my mum, love my mum, she's an amazing mum, was giving me financial advice, I wouldn't listen to a fucking word she was saying. Because she is not financially savvy, you know, and I don't mean that as a negative, but if she's going to give me advice as a parent, definitely, because I think she's an incredible mum, right? And it's like, who are you listening to? Because often, most of the people that I think are scared, it's, oh yeah, but my dad said this, my mum said that, and it's like, listen, is your mum or dad a multi-millionaire business owner? And if they are, listen to what they're saying. Maybe they know something I don't, maybe they know something that other people don't, but if they're not, then why are you taking that on board? But yeah, definitely could have been communicated better. But ultimately, I guess what I meant is my fallback is to follow the path that I was already going to follow anyway.
Yeah. So you just so essentially you just just dived head deep into property then?
Yeah. So I moved. I was in London at the time, and then I moved up here in Leeds. I moved with a couple of lads with me. I was going to go to Spain originally, And I was going to go to some obscure village with my laptop, my phone. I wanted to learn Spanish, right? Never did. There you go, life not lived there. But they said, look, you move anywhere in the UK, we'll move with you. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. Still not 100% why they wanted to do that, but I was like, right, cool. I didn't want to live in London because I couldn't afford it. Like, I think I wanted to live. And in London back then, 50, 60 grand was the minimum. Now probably more like 100 grand to live, like a good life. And then if I was going to be down south, I wanted to live in London. So I was like, right, I'm not moving into Dartford, Essex, near family, all of that. Not interested. So then at that point, I'd never been north of Birmingham, right? So one of them went, what about Leeds? Great place, 3 universities there, so lots of like younger people and things like that, pretty vibrant. I was like, yeah, wicked. So I moved up and I got a job as a headhunter and lasted about 6 months. And whilst I was there sort of doing that, I was good at it, I enjoyed it, but I was just like, this isn't me. This isn't me. And I remember sort of thinking about going on the dole and that then, and I was like, there was this ego there that was just like...
Why were you thinking about going on the dole? So you're working for this headhunting company and you were looking to what, give that up to go on the dole?
Yeah.
Why?
It's a weird thing, but I was just like, because I'm so obsessed about anything I do. So like this headhunter role, I'd be waking up thinking about it. I'd be in the shower thinking about it. I'd be on the bus to work thinking about it. I'd be on the phone before I got there. I'd be working really late. And I realised that I was putting all of my time and energy into somebody else's dream. And it was like, it's not like I was there going, in 5 years, I want to open my own headhunter business. So I had no interest in that. So I was literally just feeding somebody else. And it's like, and I was getting fed, but not in the way that I wanted. Whereas my idea, very much like I was saying with Tesco, you check in, you check out, I was like, maybe I could go on the dole and actually be able to focus. And then I started looking at it. I actually got all the paperwork, like it's like 20 pages, filled it all out. And I remember looking at the numbers, I was like, it's not a bad way of living. I can see the appeal. I'm not kidding. Even now, I'm like, because like somebody asked me the other day, if we lived in a communistic state where we all had the same amount of money, you would have to do, what would be your job? And I was like a researcher. I would just love to read. I love learning. Like I'm obsessed with it. And so I was like, being on the dole would be pretty good for that job, right? Just reading all the time. But do you know what made me think of it and what was the convincing thing to move ahead is I am going to contribute so much to this world. It's okay if I take a little as well. And that was my mindset. But the thing that stopped me was going, I don't want to take from society when I don't need to. And that was the thing that stopped me. And I don't know if that was ego, I don't know if it was the right thing, but I was like, no, like, yes, it's going to be harder doing a full-time job and all that, but I don't ever want to not contribute to society. So I didn't. So I carried it on, worked there, got my first property, built it up, and then I quit the job eventually and just went full-time.
So when you say first property, this is not the one in Burnley, this is a...
No, second.
The post-trauma.
Post-trauma, post-education, post-getting my shit together.
Okay.
Got it. And it was a rent-to-rent property. I actually got 14 rent-to-rent properties that year.
Wow.
That was good. That was paying me like £7 a month, like the 14 properties, give or take. And that was enough for me to think and go, right, like this is where like I can now focus. Hated rent-to-rent personally. It was not for me. I didn't want to be a property manager, and it is property management unless you've got the systems and the processes and you know this yourself. I didn't have any of that at all. I was making up as I go along, new problem last year, and there's no education. There's no education around that. Everyone educates you on how to get a rent-to-rent. Nobody educates you on how to bloody manage it, right?
Yeah.
And that's where you're making your money.
Absolutely.
And so I was like, nah, that's not for me. And then I got into deal packaging and scaled this business. So.
Okay, brilliant. So let's talk about that then. So you learnt about property. You did a strategy that gave you an income, allowed you to just take a step back. Now you're working for yourself. Now it's your own business. So you got more time to actually think.
Yeah.
And then you decided to leave that one behind and go into a different strategy. What was the difference? Like, why did you decide to make that decision?
Well, so the thing is, rent to rent can be really good, but it's massively oversold, in my opinion. Like, yeah, you get property, you make £500 a month. It's like, well, a grand a month for whoever's selling it, right? But what they don't tell you is, that's great when you've got 10, 20 of them, or really strict systems and processes, which they don't teach you. So the problem is, say when I had 5, it's you couldn't do that whilst you've got a job, or it's incredibly difficult. So in theory, you're making £2,500 a month, 500 each. But you get one room empty, everything's assumed on 100% occupancy, right? And it's like, right, so you're not getting that. You're actually making £1,200 a month, if you're lucky. That's before your tax. But you're a property manager. What do you think? A tenant just calls you at 6 p.m. when you finish work? No. Do you think pipes don't burst during the day, or the boiler only goes down at night? You know, all of those things. And so it was a nightmare, absolute nightmare. And then even when I was full-time in there, it was still this thing of like, you could be going out for dinner and you get the call. And unless you've got that team behind you, it's really, really difficult. Whereas with deal packaging, and also let's say it even does make you £500 a month, but I'd need to wait 10 months for that to make £5,000. Let's use that as a figure. Reality is it probably averaged closer to £300 a month. So if it's £300 a month, that's like 18 months, a year and a half to get £5,000, right? Now finding these deals, they're actually not that difficult. It's a bit of marketing. Or I could find one, give it to somebody else, great investment for them if they've got the systems process, and I get paid £5,000 today. And so I thought, So I started doing that, and I was like, So I packaged a couple of deals a month, made £10,000 a month. Meanwhile, my 14 properties were making me about £7,000 a month, ranging, right? And causing me a world of hassle. And then you've heard of Pareto's principle, the 80-20.
Yeah.
And I realised 80% of my time was spent on these rent-to-rents, 20% of the time on there, and yet 80% of my money was coming from there. And that's so I thought, I'll package on the rent-to-rents. So I re-signed them up, I packaged it on, got paid a lot.
So the 14 you had, you found that package.
Signed up longer contracts, packaged them on to investors. The investors were happy with it. They've got their rent-to-rent portfolios. I've got a nice chunk of cash, and now I've got full-time where I can package. And then, you know, as I said, now we fast forward 7 years from there, maybe 7.5 years, we're now doing about 35 a month, and the target's 50 a month by next year. So
that's incredible. And like, what would you say you've kind of learnt in that period? Because you're able to, you thought quickly. You sort of looked at what was happening. So, okay, you know what, I'm going to be agile and just move over to the strategy. Like, how long did that take you to make that decision? Because this is one thing they say about successful people, right? You know, being able to really make fast decisions and then just going, you know, full throttle in it. Right.
I don't entirely agree with that.
Yeah.
I believe there are, when you're comfortable with something, and this is the thing, like when you're really comfortable with something, you can make decisions like that. Like if my team bring me any problem about a day today, like about this investor objection, you've heard me do objection overcomes, it's like I'm like that with it because I'm comfortable, because my comfort zone's like that, right? But there's a lot of stuff outside my comfort zone, and I actually think that you're better slowing down to speed up sometimes. I actually think people make some really silly decisions because they make them quick. Whereas what I like to do, I'm still saying quicker than most. Like if I'm making a major decision, I mean, it will take me a week. You know, I'm not talking months. I'll gather the data, I'll get everything, I'll ask people I trust, I'll debate with people, I'll play the opposite and debate against myself with people, you know, like just to see and really expose those. And then I'll make the decision. The difference is, once I make my decision, I'm not unwilling to change it. If like I roll out and it's like, this is a bad thing, but I will go all out on a rollout, right? All out with a rollout. And this office is a good example of that. We've got 26 employees, but this office can hold 50, right? And you might go, bloody hell, that's it is a big investment. It's cost me about 200,000, right? To get it all kitted out and everything like that. But that's because I made the decision of where we're going next year, and nothing's stopping me now. So it's not just about the quick decisions. Yes, you need to be quick, but it's about how certain you are. And so I think that's the key. You know, most people, like, you have a conversation with people, time's often the factor. How do they communicate about time? You know, this is a problem with our industry. People talk about quitting their job next month or in 3 months and stuff like that. Whereas even when I started, I was like, well, where am I going to be when I'm 30? That was a 10-year gap. Now I'm going, where do I want to be when I'm 50? And people were like, you're 30 years old, why are you thinking that? I was like, that's why I'm going to be so successful. The longer the time scale that you're communicating in, the more likely you are to make it a success.
Why is that?
Because it's time, like, people drastically overestimate what they can do in a short amount of time and underestimate what they can do with a long amount of time, right? And so the problem is, let's say you're completely new, and you go, I want to quit my job in 90 days, okay? Well, then what you do is you go, well, how much money do I need? That's your first thing, right? How much money do I need? That's the wrong question. Wrong question. If you want to set up a successful business, if you are focused on the money, you will fail. And I don't just mean financially. I mean, you'll have terrible reviews because every decision you then make is about making more money. And I know that's a bit counterintuitive. We both know people where it's like money is the obsession, right? But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It should be, what do I want to create? What value do I want to put out there? What are my values? How do I want that to incorporate in the brand? How does that impact the decisions I make? So if integrity is one of your decisions, it's doing the right thing rather than the easy thing. Do the right thing even though people aren't looking. You know, all of that sort of thing. So if that is instilled in every decision you make, the money will inevitably follow. You correctly said earlier that money is correlated in how many people you help and the size of the value that you put out there. So if you're thinking, 3 months I want to quit my job, all you're thinking about is money, the first deal, the first deal, the first deal, the first deal. The problem with thinking about the first deal is even if you can bypass all the screw-ups because you don't have your values behind it, you might get your first deal. But what about the second? What about the fifth? What about the 10th? What about the 100th deal? And that's the big problem. If you're always focused on that deal, you're only set up for the next deal. Whereas actually, if you said in a year, I want to quit my job, which is probably a good time scale, you know, and then it's like, well, what do I need to do that? It's like, well, I need to add value to quite a lot of people. How do I want to add value? What strategy am I going to do? Is it I'm adding value to my tenants? Or is it I'm adding people to my guests in service accommodation? Or is it I'm adding value to my investors if they're invested in your fund? Whatever it is. And then you might go, what software do I need to actually facilitate that sort of value? What's the cost associated with that software? And then you go all the way through. So I know the value. I know my values. I know the vision of what I'm creating. I know the software, the tools, maybe even the people that I need to create that. What's the cost associated with that? And what do I need to make in order to quit my job in 12 months? The thing is, then, it doesn't fucking matter how much you learn in 12 months. You are set up for the next 5 years of growth. And until that breaks, and then you need to redo the systems and the pipe work.
I mean, that just makes so much sense. You were just saying, I'm just like, this makes so much sense. But at the same time, there's just, if everyone thought this way, then, you know, the reality is most people would definitely be closer to where they want to be, right? Whether that is something called delayed gratification, right? Whether it's actually in front of them right now. Because I did a post yesterday on my Facebook, and it was pretty much a quote from Thomas Edison, right? And it just basically said the reason why a lot of people fail or give up is because they didn't realize how close they were to success. Right? And that's basically what he said. And it's because you can't quite see it, maybe you give it 2 months, maybe you give it 3 months. Well, actually, this pot of gold is 12 months away, like you said. You got to set up the foundation and all these things. What's the reason why people give up? And what would you say to those people who are maybe going through that now, to say things that they can actually do to push them through, to persevere?
Yeah, I do like that quote. It's almost like there's a picture where the guy's mining for gold, and it's this big tunnel that he's come, and then the gold, like, there's that much left, or that much left, and then the gold's here, and then they turn back, and it's like you don't realise how close you are to success. So I do like that. I think it's the difference between expectations and reality. If you are expecting to quit your job in 3 months, there's a high chance you are not going to meet those expectations. Like, if I said to you, look, come up here, come and spend a day with me, and I'll pay you £1 million for the day, right? Fucking hell, they're really high expectations. Now, let's say you spent the day with me, you really enjoyed it, you got a load of value, and I just said, hey, look, I know I said this, I'm not going to be able to fulfill that, but let me pay you for your day, £500, let me pay you for your train, and here's 10 grand. Yeah? You might go, oh, I'd be happy. Not if you've got £1 million in your head.
Exactly.
Right? Whereas you've come up here expecting an interview with me, a bit of a chat, see the office. If I then said, following this, hey, look, I want to come down and buy you lunch next week, you know, when I'm down south, you might go, do you know what, that's really lovely. Suddenly, I've over-delivered on your expectations. So when you feel unhappy or a grievance or something around something, it's the gap between your expectations and reality. So then it comes down, well, what expectations should you have? To enjoy the journey. And that's it. Like, it's so hard to do and so easily said. Everyone says, enjoy the journey, not the destination.
I was gonna say, man, I've got bills to pay. Right?
Yeah,
I've got bills to pay, man. Like, how do I enjoy this journey knowing I'm gonna get there in the end?
Well, but it's being pragmatic, isn't it? And that's the thing. Get where in the end? Because get where is bullshit, mate. That there is no end. Like, are you telling me you're going to get to 10 grand a month, which is the figure that most people say, and then you're going to stop? But you're going to get to 10 grand a month and go, do you know what? Yeah, that's me at 30 years old, happy days. No, of course not. You're going to go, why can't I make 10 grand a week? Actually, 10 grand a week, you're paying 6 grand a week in tax now. I want 10 grand a week net. Then, you see what I mean? The problem with aiming for the destination, and this is where I get to what you can do about it, is you never get there. There is no destination. Your destination is death. That's it. Period. You will always have the next goal. And if you don't, die anyway, because you're not contributing to society. The best thing you can do is fucking die for yourself and those around you, I tell you. I really mean that. But the likeness is, you, me, and everyone watching, you're always going to have that next goal. So then, how can you measure it? I think having that stretch goal is really great. Have a pragmatic timeline. You know, if you could think in 1 to 3 years what you want to succeed, and I'm not saying don't achieve anything in the meantime. I'm saying your big goal. You want to earn 100 grand a year. Great. Don't aim for that in a month. You know, 1 to 3 years instead of 1 to 3 months. But also, and this is the biggest shift for me of keeping going, don't celebrate the outcomes at all. Like, you'll give yourself a pat on the back. People think I'm weird for this. When I hit my next million, 10 million, whatever, I won't celebrate it because that's just obvious. If I do the right things for long enough, of course I'm going to hit 10 million. I've not hit it yet, by the way. And it's like, and I'll hit 100 million. And maybe one day I'll be a billionaire if I can do it quick enough, but I don't give a fuck, right? So stop celebrating the outcomes and start celebrating the inputs of what you're doing. So, for example, if you look at the difference between you and, if you're doing the right things, you and most multi-millionaires, it's time. You know, it's time. So you might have all of these things, the attributes to make it up. And if you can imagine an equation, all of those attributes are X plus Y plus, and the plus is a thing. It's an addition. It's all adding up, but it adds up. But time, there's a multiple there. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the true leverage is time. That is what separates the successful people. Warren Buffett says, what's your secret? He said, I'm old. And people were laughing, right? And he was like, no, I'm serious. He was like, there are much better investors than me. So the reason I'm so successful is I've been doing it for many, many, many years, longer than everyone else. And it's true. Most of his wealth has come from compounding, the compound effect. Not so much his shrewd decisions. In fact, he's made some really stupid decisions, but he's made more right ones. It's like a successful gambler. All you need to do is win 51% of the time, and you will clear out. That's it. All right? You put enough cards on the table, enough whatever they're called, what are they? Chips on the table. As long as you can win 51% of the time, you're a multi-millionaire. That's it. And it's the same. So instead of celebrating the milestones of the outputs, start celebrating the habits a lot more, because your habits dictate your outcomes over time. And it's kind of like you would never go to the gym, do a 4-hour session, absolutely mutilate your body after not going to the gym for 3 years, and then look in the mirror, even though we all do, right, when we got a bit of swole. But you don't look in the mirror and go, what the fuck, where's my six-pack? It doesn't happen. Whereas actually, if you got to the end of each week and you celebrated that you went to the gym 4 times this week, that you did 10,000 steps a day, that you had under 2,000 calories, whatever your calories is, that's what I would celebrate with it to keep me motivated. I don't celebrate when I got a six-pack. I certainly don't celebrate a milestone of having 1 million, 10 million, whatever. I don't give a fuck about that. That's just an outcome of my habits. That's like celebrating making it to bed at night and I'm tired because I worked hard. It's like, yeah, of course I did. I'm not celebrating being tired, though. The next thing and the final thing I'd say is when you celebrate, don't align it to the goal, okay? So what I mean by that is, let's say I've got a body weight, I want to lose some fat, right? And I hit a milestone of inputs or outputs on there. I prefer the inputs, as I said. I will never celebrate by going out for a meal. Okay, because it fucks with your wiring in your brain. If you celebrate by giving yourself something that you've given abstinence to through fixing your goal, I won't then do that. So, for example, in business, I will never ever, if I hit a financial milestone of some kind, I will not go and blow it on a fancy new watch because I hit that financial thing. I might go volunteer for a day because I really enjoy that, right? It'll be something that's not directly aligned to what I've actually achieved. It has to be disaligned.
Oh, that's really interesting because people tend to say like, well, look, if you give something up a little bit, you got to celebrate just to get yourself excited. So what you're actually saying is celebrate, but it shouldn't have a correlation to that thing that you've actually abstained from, because it's almost confusing your mind.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give some really weird examples. Like really, the problem is when you've got a lot of money, you can buy most things, and that creates a problem. Because if everything's readily available to you, and you reward yourself for nothing, you ruin your discipline that actually allowed you to achieve it in the first place. And often that's the problem. Our memories are so awful. Like after about 5 seconds, your memory is gone. Right? Every memory you have past an hour ago is a lie. Like factually, it is a lie for everyone. You know when people are, I remember exactly what you said. No, you don't. That's not real. So the problem with that is what got you here today, you forget about. And it's why so many people, 6 months after getting results, stop getting results because they stopped doing what they did 6 months ago. Yeah. Right? And it's like, wow, like actually, yeah, that's why I was getting leads through my Instagram, because I was reaching back to basics, right? Success is about doing more of the basic things, not new advanced things all the time. So when you're sort of looking at that, celebrating it. So I've got this list of things. I've got a spreadsheet with all this stuff that I really like on it. And one of them, really random one, is a treadmill, but like a standing treadmill, so like under your desk, so I can get my steps in when I'm there. Really random, right? So it costs like 600 quid to get it. But my goal through buying myself that treadmill is when I hit a certain amount of properties that are tenanted. Right? And the reason why the tenant forecast is there is because I know that is going to facilitate my letting agency, which is launching 2 weeks from now, right? So, but how are they aligned? They're not. It's something I want over here for my health, and this is to facilitate a job rollout. Not aligned at all, but it has to, because otherwise what ends up happening is you get disincentivized to it. Kind of like, if you are not going to drink alcohol until a certain thing in your health, and then you get smashed, it completely destroys the discipline that you've built up to get towards it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's weird psychology, but it works.
I get it, because that is a huge amount of discipline, because first of all, you're not depriving yourself, but yeah, this treadmill is something you need for your health, which is obviously one of those markers on the wheel, right? But you're staying away from that until you hit this success, somewhere else. And then when you get this, then you can. So there's a huge amount of importance on this, actually. So this isn't just something I just want to go and enjoy something. It's actually something that you want, and you have to stay away from it because of achieving this goal. So that's a huge amount of discipline and incentive to actually make sure you achieve this goal as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, super, super powerful. But just kind of going back to the inputs, because I think this goes back to what you were saying about, you don't know what you don't know. So believing in that process and believing in those inputs is only possible if you've actually got the right information and the right inputs in the first place. Otherwise, you could lead yourself astray. And that really kind of comes back to, because, you've, personally mentored myself, and, definitely I would recommend it to everyone out there, because it completely transformed my business, right? So just talk a little bit more about your education side of things, and why did you choose to go into education?
Well, so all genuinely selfish reasons originally. So, and then it just so happens that it helps people after. And then I've realised how much I like helping people, so it's become more of a focus. So, first of all, like, what is it? It's, well, you can go out and you can learn through failure, the school of hard knocks, right? The issue is it's so costly. Like, if you think about the most valuable resource that we all have, it's time. Like, we are going to die. And some believe it's set in stone when we're going to die. I don't know. I think you can enhance it or drop it based on your activities in life. But let's say you're going to die at 80 on your 80th birthday, all right? And if you know you're going to get there, then each second it's getting more valuable to you, right? And because it's getting more scarce, it's the only asset actually in your entire life that's diminishing constantly. Money will come and go, people will come and go, right? It's the only asset. And so people think the cost of education is expensive. It's like, well, try fucking ignorance, because that's going to cost you the most time, which is the most valuable resource. So you can learn that way. I'm not saying no, if you don't get educated, you'll never be successful. It's bollocks, right? But you're going to have to try that route. And the problem when you go the wrong way is it's not a case of, oh, verge that way. Often you have to come back and then go the right way. And then you're hoping you've gone the right way. The cool thing about being educated about somebody that's maybe 5 to 10 years ahead of you is they know that's the wrong route. They know that's the objection you're going to get. They know once you get to that size, that's the problem you're going to come up with. They know how to handle this. They know how to handle that. So you get this sort of trickle-down economy effect where if somebody is here and they've done all of this, all of their knowledge trickles down to you. And hopefully if they believe in education that much, they then have their mentors that trickles down to them, that trickles down to you. And then hopefully they have their mentor. You get the point, and it's over and over. And so it sort of helps you develop at an exponential rate. So the reason I got into education actually was property education, is because so many people were bringing us deals to sell for them, because we really focused on investors. We've got great investors, you know, really good relationships. And people were like, oh, can you sell this property? And I'd look at it and go, that is dog shit. And I'd be nice about it. I'd just say, listen, really appreciate it. I don't have the time to go through properties on this level. My suggestion is you go out there. There's some great people out there. Go get educated, and we'll see what we can do. And then they'd be there like, I have gone on education. I was like, no, some paid for education. And they'd be like, I have. And I won't mention names on here because they're still going. But I was like, you've paid to get educated. And then so what I ended up doing is create like this mini education thing for free, but sent it to them and said, you have to have sat through that training to then start bringing us properties. Small prospects, like 5 hours worth of training, something like that. And it was only about assessing deals properly and things like that, not the marketing, how to find them, that sort of thing. And they brought us great deals. And I thought, oh, brilliant, brilliant. So then my property business started taking in these people, and I was like, hold on a second, like there's more deals than money out there. Why am I letting these people just bring me deals for free? I should be monetizing that. And so I thought, well, what if I helped a few people more? And I thought, well, I'll just do this random course for people. And I said, look, this is the layout. And I did this weird sell, because in the industry, people are like, you're financially free. So I did this post. And it was something like, hey, look, I'm launching this program. Here's the concept, the features of it all. I said, here's a few things I can guarantee. You'll regret signing up at some point because it's fucking hard work. You probably will cry through how hard this is in the first place. You will not have a deal in 30 days. You will not quit your job in 90 days, and you'll hate property within 2 years. I was like, if you're still interested, say I'm in. And I did like an entry price of, I think I did $1,000 for the first 20 and then upped it from there. And within about 15 minutes, had 20 people snap my arm off for it. And I was like, huh. And I asked the people, why did you sign up? And they said, because you were so upfront about it, and this industry is so full of people that go, you're going to be financially free in 30 days and all of that. Whereas I'd like to think I'm a pretty upfront person with people. And so people seem to buy into this. It's like an anti-sell by saying how hard it all is. It's, well, do you want to do a program with somebody that's going to tell you it's hard, it's difficult, but it is simple. You can do these steps, but it's going to be tough. Or do you want the person that's going to sell you the dream? And so people got bought into that, and then I sort of built it up, and then it feeds through to this business. So the idea is I've got educating people to the best of my ability. They then bring me properties that I can sell to my investors, which then goes through my case progression, hopefully the law company that I own next year, which then goes through my mortgage brokerage next year, the lettings company that's starting next month, and so on. So it all sort of feeds into each other.
Constant pipeline. I love that. You know, but like you said, it's about giving value. But you know, if you give value to more people, you're gonna get something back in return, right? And it's, yes, you're getting paid for it, you know, but the value that they're getting out of that, you know, for me, for example, I came exactly because of that, the amount of value you're giving on YouTube, you know, and just how genuine it is as well. And look, we're not mugs. Do you know what I mean? Like when you're trying to sell us a dream, and we're like, well, I know it's not easy, mate, because if it was easy, then everyone would be a bloody millionaire. Do you know what I mean? And that's the reality of it. But you okay, this person is actually just telling you, like, look, it's not going to be easy, but if you just follow the process and you stick with it, that's how I've got to where I am. You can do the same. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I like this stuff. You know, let me listen to what they're saying. And, you know, for me personally, it's been incredible. And I know I've spoken to a lot of your mentees as well. And, you know, very, very similar results for them. So
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's definitely great. But in terms of your property business now, you know, just almost all coming to the end, which is a shame because there's so much more that I would like to go into with yourself.
That's cool.
Like you guys are doing incredible things, and it's coming to sort of my final question. With where you are now, you guys were the property investor of the year last year, your property business. Personally, yourself individually, and you know, this is a big country, right? A lot of people doing property, a lot of people, right? But you were the property investor of the year last year. Like, you know, there's probably some things that we didn't speak about. You know, you retired your mom. You know, you bought your mom her dream home. Like all of these things, which are like, all the boxes are like tick, 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 tick. You know. So the final question we have on this podcast, with all of that being said, like today, what is your need to succeed?
I think in a word it would be contribution. So like my quote is a head for business and a heart for the world. And so the feedback that I get is I don't talk enough about what I'm trying to do for the world. And obviously naturally I talk about business quite a lot, but my aim is to give it all away. And people are like, what? That's mad. And it's like, why? I'm going to die. And people are like, what about your kids? It's like, yeah, you maybe got 3 generations, then you're forgotten. Like, you're forgotten. You think about some of the richest people in the world from 100 years ago, their families, are like, or maybe not 100, but maybe 500 years ago, unless their families learn and were educated, which is not the dumb thing originally, they're not rich now. It all disintegrates. So inheritance is bullshit after maybe your great-great-great-grandkids, right? So I want to give it all away, but whilst I'm living, I want to have that contribution factor. So I'm not sure how it's going to take shape. Like around homelessness seems a good option, around education in developing countries. So I've done some schools out in Africa now. I've got about 15 there, which is cool, in the Gambia. I really want to scale that up. I want to put like an English education system, which I think is a decent one, in those countries to help them develop scholarships, stuff like that, and give them that sort of entrepreneurial spirit. But ultimately, like I said, money has no value until you give it away. And that could be to purchase something, some food. Great, now I can eat. Maybe it's for the heating. Maybe it's the roof over my head, whatever it is. Or indeed giving it away to fund other people and their ventures and how they can contribute. So I guess my need to succeed is how much can I impact the world in a positive way? Because I know in a few generations my legacy has disappeared. My name will go no matter what. Like, I'm not going to have my name on the side of many buildings and stuff like that. But what if I can solve something? Like, genuinely solve something, whether it is only for 1,000 kids a year in Africa, or maybe something more substantial. And I don't give a fuck if my name's out there or not. I know that when I'm on my deathbed, it's like that is something that's lasting and will develop. Somebody else will take up my small stepping stones and make it into a mountain one day. So I don't know the direction because I'm 30 years old. You know, I don't have all the answers. I think people sometimes expect that. All I know is when I die, I want to have added more than I subtracted from the world. And, you know, that is where the head for business, heart for the world comes in, is I just want to contribute in a significant way.
Wow, Jamie York, thank you very much.
Good to be on, man.
Thank you, man.
Really enjoyed that. Let's do a second episode in a few months' time.
100%, man. I'd love to do that, man. 100%. It's been amazing. Awesome.
All right.
Yes, mate.
Good?
That was good, mate. That was good. Fucking hell.